One of the most incredible things that I've come to learn is the complexity of the systems beneath the earth, with mycelium and things like that, and the ways in which mycelium are very much the brain of fungi, and the ability that they have to communicate within its own internal systems, but also communicate with external forces, whether that is the presence of another fungi or trees and their roots, or the very soil itself, and sort of the ways in which mycelium has the ability to communicate with its environment through exploration and through communication via sort of chemical signals and this kinds of thing. And so for me, that was the kind of detail that was like, this needs to be incorporated somehow. The ability for this interconnected system to have such a dense form of communication that is so different from humans.
Hello and welcome to this special author interview for FanFiAddict. I'm Frasier Armitage, part-time robot, full-time nerd, author of New Yesterday and Time's Ellipse. And joining me today is a very good friend of mine, somebody who I am delighted to have on the show and to be able to speak to. It is the creator and the co-host of SFF Addicts. It is the new king of Fungalpunk and debut author, Adrian M. Gibson. Adrian, you legend, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, buddy. I'm just very happy to be here with you, and I will correct you. It is the father of Fungalpunk, not the king. I'm not about that monarchy shit.
You're the daddy. Yeah, you're the zaddy of
I'm the dad.
Fungalpunk. Yeah.
I'm a stay-at-home dad, and I'm the dad of Fungalpunk.
It is
Oh
so
man.
exciting. Your debut novel, Mushroom Blues, it is awesome. I finished it last night. I
Thank you.
absolutely loved it. Tell everybody, because I know that you've been talking a lot about this over the last month, but just tell everybody who has somehow missed it, what can people expect from your book?
Yeah, so I'll do a quick elevator pitch so people have an idea of what it's about. Obviously, you're watching this on the FanFiAddict YouTube channel, so you know me. You've probably heard me talking about the book already up to this point. But like you said, for anyone who doesn't know, Mushroom Blues is the start of a series called the Hoffman Report, as well as the first introduction to the Fungalverse shared universe that I've created, which will encompass the Hoffman Report, but also other series taking place over various periods of time. But Mushroom Blues in particular is a police procedural murder mystery wrapped in fungi, which is where Fungalpunk came from. It takes place in a fictional city that is based on Tokyo and a culture that is based on Japan. And the inhabitants of this city are mushroom headed people who long ago merged with fungi and are now, in a modern world, and their nation has been invaded by a nation of humans who are now occupying their country and their capital city of Neo-Kanoko. And it's from the perspective of Henrietta Hoffman, who's a very jaded, quite racist homicide detective working for the Neo-Kanoko Police Department. And right from the get-go, she is thrust into a series of confounding murders and disappearances of children that she has to solve, begrudgingly with the help of a mushroom-headed cop named Koji Nameko, as the two traverse the city, and her fundamental beliefs are put to question by the experiences that she has over the course of this story.
Yeah, it's perfect. That sums it up so well. I love that you describe Henrietta as not just being like out and out racist. She's just quite racist. It's like
Yeah.
only against mushroom headed people does
Yeah.
she object. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
She's
like
mycophobic. She's not down with that shit. You put mushrooms on her plate and she's like, hell no. You put her in a mushroom city. She's like, fuck me. This is not good.
you have had some great feedback on this book. You've had people saying that it breaks the mold and that it's sporesome and all this kind of stuff. Are you ever going to get tired of hearing mushroom puns when people make them about fungal punk?
No, only if they call me a fungi. That's the only one that I'm just like, you put in zero effort.
You
You haven't
object
even
to it.
thought about this. So for me, I'm like, David Walters from FanFiAddict, he put on sporing, and I was like, hell yeah, dude. Or you saying break the mold. I'm like, hell yeah, dude. That involves a little bit more uh forethought and kind of like a very good sense of humor. Whereas fungi, I'm like, you think I'm a fun guy? Ha ha ha, that's lazy.
Yeah.
Think of something else.
I love that you would get like a 5-star review. It's like this: the author who wrote this is a fungi, and you just be like, try harder. That is
Yeah. Yeah.
perfect. I love it.
I'm
I
gonna
love it.
go on
And
Goodreads and just be like, try hard. You wrote me a
yeah,
really nice review, but on this particular aspect,
just purely on mushroom
you fucking
puns.
failed.
Yeah, yeah. Well, pun is part of Fungalpunk. You have to take it seriously, right? So
Yeah,
it's yeah,
fungal puns, man. Yeah.
exactly, fungal puns and Fungalpunk.
Mhm.
Now I know that mushrooms are your passion. You have many
One
passions
of
in
my
life,
passions. Yeah.
yeah, but they're one of them. What was it like infusing a world, an entire world, with something that you're so passionate about?
At this point, it doesn't even feel like something that I had to try hard to do. Because the creation of the fungal verse, when I started it like almost 6 years ago, was just a lot of me researching and reading about mushrooms and illustrating stuff. Like for anyone who's watching, like this is Koji, but older version of Koji, but he's one of the first characters I created, and I illustrated him, and I've illustrated others and illustrated aspects of this world. So like the visually, because my mind runs in a very visual kind of way, the world is so richly detailed and imagined in my brain that it didn't feel like a slog or confusing or anything like that. It didn't present many hurdles. It only presented opportunities. And so it was very easy for me to be like, how can I incorporate mushrooms into this particular aspect of the story or the world or what have you? And ideas would just start swirling through my head. And very quickly, I was like, okay, this is good. How can I make it weirder? How can I make it more gross? How can I like enhance certain aspects of the fungal people or the experiences of Henrietta? How can I enhance that and make it more um, evocative in like a sensory way through mushrooms? And so it's like I've just been so obsessed with mushrooms for such a long time that it wasn't something that I had to like push myself to research more about or try and force myself to think of creative ways to incorporate it. It was like, no, that shit was seamless. It was magical.
That's epic. I think as well, you can really feel the passion that you have for it. This is not just an idea that you've had and thought, oh, I can do something with this. This is something that you really care about, and that
Mhm.
passion kind of brings the reader into that world because you're making it sort of accessible in a way to many people who may not have thought about, well, what if mushrooms were sentient? And
Mhm.
it's. I feel like you absolutely smashed that because the world that you create is very accessible still. When you were thinking about sort of making it weirder and all that kind of thing, did you reach a limit with it where you were like, okay, this is too weird, or were you just always trying to push beyond?
No, I was constantly pushing. It's like there are parts in this book that are supremely disgusting and very very disturbing on like a visual level but also on like an emotional and psychological level. And so all of that was like those end versions are me pushing further beyond what I had already done before. Each revision stage was like, how can I make this like more impactful? How can I make this more disgusting? How can I make this feel as just viscerally uncomfortable as possible? Or on the other hand, because I think this is like a big dichotomy in the book, is like mushrooms as both beautiful and sort of unsettling. I think that's kind of like the spectrum that I was trying to create. Unsettling could also include like disgust and things like that. And so for me, it was also like, how can I push the boundaries in terms of making mushrooms and these mushroom people more sort of beautiful and sublime, and how can I evoke the fascinating aspects of their biology or of nature and that kind of thing, while at the same time indulging in some really like uncomfortable body horror. And so it's kind of allowing that spectrum to sort of broaden the opinions that people may have about mushrooms, and sort of have them ending the book and their takeaway being, I'm more interested in learning about fungi, or I'm more disgusted than ever by fungi, or somewhere in between where they're kind of like, they are grossed out, but they're also fascinated. And so I tried to strike that balance in order to give the reader a chance to like breathe at the same time as kind of striking up sort of their imagination in ways that they can carry forward beyond this book.
Yeah, that's awesome. In terms of your research, so you 6 years and you started out just pure research into mushrooms and into all of that side of things. And was there what was the thing that you came across, the detail about mushrooms in all of that research that stood out to you the most, or that you just absolutely loved, and did you manage to include it in the book?
Yeah, I think for me it's because for so much of my life I had viewed mushrooms as I think like I had a difficult time separating mushrooms from fungi. And mushrooms are just a part of fungi, you know? They're the penis of the mycological world. And all they're meant to do is sprout, bloom, and spread spores in whichever the way that takes shape, through gills or pores or what have you. It's like, I'm just going to put my penis out there and the wind is going to carry away my spores. But so much of
Can you
fungi
please make
is
a t-shirt with that?
just put my penis out there and the wind will take care of the rest. But one of the most incredible things that I've come to learn is the complexity of the systems beneath the earth, with mycelium and things like that, and the ways in which mycelium are very much the brain of fungi, and the ability that they have to communicate within its own internal systems, but also communicate with external forces, whether that is the presence of another fungi, or trees and their roots, or the very soil itself, and sort of the ways in which mycelium has the ability to communicate with its environment through exploration and through communication via sort of chemical signals and this kinds of thing. And so for me, that was the kind of detail that was like, this needs to be incorporated somehow. The ability for this interconnected system to have such a dense form of communication that is so different from humans. And that's where the fungal net was born. This ability for the fungal people to communicate with each other through this sort of like brain to brain, fungi to fungi uh sort of system, where it's like almost telepathic in a way. But I rooted it much more in not like human forms of communication, but a more a more empath sort of communication system, where they're conveying emotions to each other, they're conveying their mood, they're conveying uh, intentions and things that can't necessarily be explained through words, but they are able to understand it because their language is so alien to what we know as human beings. And then on top of that, the ability for them to sort of pull visual information through these emotions and actually go into each other's memories, or, you know, purposefully share your memories with another person. And so mycelium and all that I learned about mycelium got me thinking about how can communication be achieved through different biological means, and how would fungal people communicate with each other? And that's where it almost feels like very cyberpunk, where they have this sort of like brain to brain telepathic ability, but it takes a much more uh natural form, in the sense that I'm not just like thinking the word hello to you, Frasier. It's like, no, you and I are sharing with each other how excited we are, how happy we are, and the things that are coming together to influence our intentions as we interact with one another.
I love that it's like this mix of like there almost being like a little bit of like the collective, this like
Mhm.
shared mind behind it,
Like
but also
hive mind kind of deal. But then there's also so much individuality there, that the hive mind is not this all encompassing, very homogenous kind of entity. It's like, no, it is this collective entity in terms of the ways in which these people are able to communicate with each other, but they are very much individuals who are motivated by their own desires. And it happens multiple times through the story where people are purposefully obscuring themselves from the outside world, almost like a social media account blocking another social media account, so that the access is obscured and fogged.
and I loved how it was like it's almost like instead of sharing their brains, it's like they have this like collective heart and what you're saying about
Mhm.
empath,
Yep.
and there's
I
like
love that.
this.
Like a, yeah, collective heart as opposed to a collective brain. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I
Mhm.
was feeling from it, but I was kind of like getting it this whole conversation just in the way that they communicate between the individual and the collective, because we are all part of a wider system, and but we all exist as individuals within it, and sometimes you have to engage with things that you may not particularly appeal to you or may not, and so there's this whole commentary that is not beyond, even though it's so alien, it's so well done because you feel a
It's
connection with
human.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And that like a lot of the inspiration for, because this will play into later books, but also like other series where things start to get more into like corporations and more like cyberpunk vibes. But social media was a huge inspiration for the fungal net and the ways in which this form of communication takes shape, and the ways in which we can feel extreme happiness at being able to interact with someone virtually, but at the same time being like, I feel like all of these comments and all this shit that is happening on social media is just inundating me with anxiety and making me feel more disconnected as opposed to more connected. And so I feel like there's a lot of nuance there to be explored. But I love the idea of it happening through biological means as opposed to technological means.
Absolutely. And you really get that. I mean, I was thinking about it and I was thinking about social media as I was reading it because I was that's how I was connecting with it. So I think
Mhm.
you totally smash it and you
Nice.
set out to do
Yes.
what you wanted to do. Um Another thing, there are a few other things we mentioned about mushrooms being your passion, but you have a few other passions and a few other loves. And I noticed that you have plenty of little Easter eggs that sort of like allude to these things through the book. Which out of all of the Easter eggs that you included is the one that you would be like most happy if somebody cottoned onto that? What's like the obscurest, deepest cut that you put into the book?
Well, I can't tell anyone about it
Yeah,
right
yeah,
now
you can
unless
tell me.
they'll
You can
find
tell
it.
me. It's all good.
No, no, I'll just be more broad and say like it was really fun for me to be able to include nods, whether it's more implicit, like Henrietta throughout the course of the book is listening to cassettes, and that kind of that becomes like a symbol of her developing bond with Koji as she's listening to this like Pilz rock, which is a take on like krautrock from Germany during the Cold War. And those songs I was able to incorporate like references to my friends, references to authors whose work I adore. At the same time, I was able to like name people and places after characters or places in anime and movies that I really love. But then there are also scenes that are homages to um, movies and pop culture and things that I really love. So there's just like a lot for people to kind of parse through, but I'm not going to give any specific spoilers away,
Ah,
because that'll take away the
ooh.
fun.
Yeah, that's
No,
true. That's true. Yeah.
quiet, you.
All right, Pills Rock. Yeah,
Yeah.
give us. Can you have you got in your head like what these specific songs that you allude to would
Mhm.
sound like? So
Yep.
could you give us like a rendition of a Pills Rock like
I
anthem?
can I can't do a rendition right now.
Do you need like
Man,
full
you
band
you're
behind you? Just
you're
like
just yeah. It's just like I have an orchestra behind my
yeah.
show.
I really wish
No.
I'd arranged it so that there was like
Yeah.
people who could come in behind you with heavy metal guitars and like
Oh
that
my
would be
god.
yeah.
But I will say there when the book launches on the 19th, there so right now, like people can go listen to the Mushroom Blues Spotify playlist. And every single chapter has an associated song. And that was very much me, like this is music that I listened to while I was writing, music that I've always been inspired by. And so there's like a very direct relationship between the songs that I chose and the sort of mood of that particular chapter, and how the song might be a reflection of what's going on. Like chapter 11 is called Rubicon, and the song that I chose for that is a song called Rubicon by the band Tangerine Dream, which is a krautrock band. Absolutely amazing, stunningly atmospheric and beautiful, but also just like menacing and disturbing. And so it's really cool for me to be able to have these references, have these songs within chapters, but then also be able to like build it out with the playlist and also the official soundtrack that my friends from Sweden, the production duo Spore, what they created, and how that is like a very, you know, heartfelt and um deeply personal reflection of this book, because one of the two people in the production duo is like my best friend for the last 10 years, and he was the best man at my wedding. And so for him to be able to collaborate on this with me was just it was perfection. Like it was, one of those things that makes you really emotional to be able to collaborate with someone who you respect so much, but also that has a particular talent that they can utilize in order to, bring out the best in their skills, but also bring out more of what I did with the story.
And can absolutely recommend both the playlist and the cassette as well because they are very beautifully curated in their own unique ways. But yeah, I absolutely can recommend it. And you will if you don't want a cassette of
You can get it
before reading
digitally.
the
You can
book.
stream it on Spotify. Yeah.
I was going to say, if you don't want one, you are going to want one after reading the book. You'll get to the end of the book and you'll be like, yeah, where's the cassette? I need one. It's like,
Uh-huh.
it's amazing. Um, I want to talk to you about the amount of, because we've talked about the amount of thought that you've put into this. It's been going around in your head for 6 years, but I felt like it was just such a thoroughly well thought out concept that you explore not just in one way but in many different ways, like you're talking about with like the fungal net, but then also like the idea of if you hear mushrooms people think hallucinations and things like that.
Hallucinogens. Yeah.
All of these different aspects sort of like feed into the book and there isn't anything that's kind of left out, even like mushrooms as a food, it's all in there. um because it's been in your brain for so long and because it's so well thought out, do you feel like this is going to be something that you're going to be able to replicate with other projects, or do you feel like this fungal verse that you've created is going to be so unique because it is kind of like because it's been in your brain for so long, because it's been living for
Mhm.
so long already?
Not necessarily, because my passions don't just lean towards fungi. It's like I have so many ideas outside of the fungal verse that I know like I can explore mushrooms in myriad ways through the fungal verse books and through the different series that I'm writing there. But then I have series that are outside of that, set in the real world. Um like a duology that I plan to write that's set in Ecuador with it's sort of like a heist uh duology, but like between Quito and the moon, and a moon colony, with a space elevator as like the link between them two. And so it's like that will allow me to explore everything that I love about Ecuador, but also my fascination with space and sort of like the more technical side of, um, space travel and the engineering of a space elevator, but setting all of that up in a much more engaging framework like a heist, or books that I want to set in. It's like a sort of a cyberpunk, uh, globe trotting type conspiracy series where this duo who are very like cybernetically enhanced and everything like that are solving crimes around the world, under the guise under the umbrella of this like international organization, and the ways in which their crimes build up towards a grander conspiracy. And one of the characters in that duo is deaf, but he's also very cybernetically enhanced. So it's like, why did he choose to remain deaf? And that is playing into my experiences with my parents who are both deaf, and being able to view the world through their eyes with this character and his actions, and why someone in a cyberpunk world would choose to be cybernetically enhanced but also to remain handicapped in that particular way, but by choice, through their sense of community and pride, and the things that they've endured over the course of their lifetime. So there's so many different facets of my life that I can explore through fiction that isn't just mushrooms. And I think that's just the beauty of storytelling, is that no matter what the particular conceit may be, no one person is that sort of narrowly focused in their fascinations with the world. I think writers in particular are um, they're very astute in the ways in which they perceive the world and the ways in which they absorb information. And all of that just gets like swirled around in this like messy like blender that we have called the brain, and it gets spewed out in amazing ways. And so through the Fungalverse, I get to explore mushrooms, but through my other work that I'm going to start incorporating in the future, there's just tons of stuff that I'm fascinated about with how the world works, different cultures, history, all these different things that I will be able to explore through the other stuff.
I cannot wait for more of your brain spew. It's going to be fantastic.
That's what I'm going to start calling my body of work. This is my brain spew. Enjoy. It smells a little bit acidic, but you'll love it. Trust me.
Yeah, just chow down on it. Just enjoy it. Yeah, I feel like
drizzle it all over your mushrooms. It's gonna be delicious.
Mushrooms. Can I have some extra brain spew with this mushroom, please?
Yeah.
I'm feeling I'm feeling like the passion that you have for all of these different things. That's part of your soul. It's part of your identity when it comes to your writing, and it's so good to hear that, and it gets me so excited, talking to writers about their passions. I guess for anybody who loves listening in and is like an aspiring to be a writer, I guess one of the lessons that certainly I'm going to take away from the experience you've had is how important it is to delve into your passions and not to hide away from them. Don't be ashamed of them. Just mind them and understand them and get to know them better. And as you explore it, that's when stories arise. And that's
the kind of thing that will fuel you through the writing process. It's also the thing that will more likely garner the attention of whichever path you choose. If you go traditional, it's more likely that your passion is going to bleed through and grab the attention of an agent or an editor. Or if you're an indie, it's the kind of thing that readers will really pick up on. Readers will be like, wow, this is so cool that someone is this obsessed with X thing. And the way that that can come through in a story, the only person putting limits on it is you. And so if you stifle yourself, whether it's like, oh, someone like people aren't going to like this or whatever, it's not marketable, blah, blah, blah. I wrote a fucking book about mushroom headed people, and everyone who's read the book has loved it. So it doesn't have to be so uh, cut and dry of like, this is going to sell or this is not. If you write a good story and you infuse your passions into it, then people will pick up on that. Word of mouth will spread. And if you choose not to do that, you're more likely going to regret it.
Yeah, that's great advice. And even if the things that you're writing about, like you say, there isn't a market for now, you could end up,
There will be. We could
yeah,
create one.
create one.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
there is somebody out there wants to read a book about sentient mushrooms, and
Mhm.
you've made it for them. You know,
Yeah.
somebody out there will
Actually,
want to.
it's really cool. There's another author. He put out a book like a month ago, and I had no idea he existed or he was like this book was coming out. But his name is Austin. Let me just search like Austin Shire. I think that's how it's pronounced. But he put out like a pretty short novel called City of Spores, and it is noir fungal punk. Even though he didn't frame it as that, it's like holy shit. In the same span of months, in the spring of 2024, two completely distinct authors living distinct lives decided, I'm going to launch my mushroom noir book out into the world. And the fact that that happens, like now we've chatted a few times, like we support each other's work, we retweet each other's stuff because it's like, yes, let's do this, like let's make this a thing. And hopefully that will create more desire, more sort of need from readers to experience something like this.
I really wanted you to say more hunger for mushrooms. I really wanted you to do it, but it was there for the taking, Adrian. It was right there, but
It wasn't on the tip of my tongue, so it was on the tip of yours. You could have finished my sentence. We could have
I
like
could have done.
an empathic connection going on right now.
Maybe we do. Maybe this is it.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. I feel like if I maybe that's what everybody who reads this book is going to do. It's going to be brought into the fungal net. You know, that could be it.
That's the hope, you know? Because it's like the amount of people that have kind of been absorbed into this process, whether it's my friends and the other authors and the people who've helped out. You know, Felix Ortiz, my cover artist, Spore, the music that they created for it, everyone that helped out with my book tour. It's just self-publishing is not a lonesome thing. Writing is a lonesome thing, but there's so many aspects to self-publishing a book that is a team effort and requires the skill and attention and passion of other talented people, not just yourself.
And I know on that line as well that you're also part of a writing group, and you would, you know, share your work with others and that kind of thing. Do you feel like that is a good thing to get involved with if you are sort of an indie author and you're thinking, well, how can I grow, how can I like build my tribe? Do you
Mhm.
think writing groups are has that benefited you?
Yes. So I will make a distinction between my writing critique group, which I was doing with Patricia A. Jackson and Peter Hartog. Those two really changed my perspectives on what it means to be a writer and what I'm capable of as a writer. They broke me down in order for my imagination and my fungal imagination to sprout and flourish. And I think that's very valuable. If you can find people who can give you constructive feedback, not just like, hey, let's sit down and like let's read each other and blah blah blah, like everyone's just you know sniffing your ass and giving you praise, that isn't helpful. it might be helpful to boost your confidence, but it's not going to boost your skill. And so that constructive criticism is very beneficial. And then on the other hand, I have a Discord group called the Break-ins, which was founded by Scott Palmer and Josh Walker. And that's just like 16 indie authors who either debuted last year or who are debuting this year. And it's kind of like a writing like therapy group in a lot of ways, where we're able to like share with each other all the stuff that we're going through. If we have any questions about, you know, self-publishing, like through Kindle Direct Publishing or through Ingram Spark, or stuff about formatting, or stuff about promotion or interviews and podcasts and ARC readers and reviewers, whatever it may be, you just pop in there and at everyone, and these questions will be answered by people who are very caring and full of love. And so it's been very nice to have the support of them as we've kind of like bolstered each other through all of our individual publishing and writing processes. So I think it's incredibly valuable. You don't have to find like a critique group or a debut author Discord or something like that. I think the important thing is just putting yourself out there and figuring out who do I connect with the most and how I could foster those relationships, as opposed to dwelling in isolation and making it harder for yourself in a situation where you need to be able, because like most authors that I've met, their spouses or partners don't necessarily understand this mad obsession that we have. They can support it, but a lot of the time they're just like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, you know? Or, you know, like you go off to your office or writing space or whatever you do, and that is your time, but I don't know how this works. And so to have other authors and colleagues and peers to talk to about this kind of stuff is so valuable, because you can vent and someone's like, I understand you. And that is so precious when you can just like, I don't know what the fuck is going on or what I'm doing. And someone's like, I get it. That is enough to just like pull you back to reality and make you understand I'm not the only one who's experienced this.
Definitely. It's almost like we have our own author version of the fungal net, you know, because we've got that shared experience in common. You can say things and people just get it, you know, and get where you're at. I love that. It would be totally remiss of me to not mention SFF Addicts, because everybody who's listening now is likely a fan of the show. So I just got 2 questions that I wanted to pitch and throw your way about SFF Addicts. First of all, out of all of the masterclasses and the advice that you've had from authors over the years, what is the best takeaway that helped you in writing Mushroom Blues? And then secondly, second question, with having had so much advice and feedback, you were super prepared to become an indie author and a debut author, but what part of the process has surprised you the most? So first of all, best piece of advice that applied to Mushroom Blues?
Probably an interview that MJ and I did in October, which released in November, with Jim Butcher, author of the Dresden Files, and among other things. But our conversation with him and the way that he discussed this sort of story framework called scene sequel. And when I say sequel, it's like, yes, you can apply it to sequels across books and series, but he's also talking about sequential storytelling. And the way that he framed it in terms of how he approaches scenes with this particular sequence of beats, in terms of emotion, emotion, reason, review, decision, is how he frames it. So that is so fundamental to how human beings react to things, But the way that he framed it is not every scene has to give the same amount of attention to each of those aspects, you know? And that also applies to genres. You know, like romance, he described is much more heavily leaning towards the emotion part of it, whereas murder mystery is much more involved in the reason part of the equation. And so it's like each scene you can approach through this kind of framework in terms of, okay, what happened in the last chapter? And then how do I carry that sequence forward to the next scene? And how does that character react emotionally to what just happened? And then how do they kind of ground themselves in reason? And then how do they review their emotions and everything that's happening in order for make a decision to continue forward to the next scene? And that kind of plays in over and over. And that just blew my mind. Like it really just kind of blew my mind. And so it's like, while I was revising Mushroom Blues, I was thinking like, I was actually doing that a lot of the time. And the scenes that were weakest were the ones that were lacking in a particular focus on certain parts of that sequence. And so I was able to do a lot of refining through the revision process in order to make each scene feel like a natural human progression of this is what happened to this person, then this, then this, then this. And all of it feels rooted in the truth of that character and their perspectives of the world. So Jim Butcher just like completely like broke me in a way. But it's also so amazing to then look back and realize like, wow, so many of the stories that I love just kind of play with this. And the tricky part is figuring out like how much weight to put on any one aspect, given your characters, your story, the genres that you're working in, the story conventions and beats that people are expecting. And to have that as such like a core piece of the puzzle just made me much more confident that I was already doing a lot of this, but I just didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to define it. And B, now that I can define it, I can be much more conscious about how I approach it from the beginning in the drafting stage, as opposed to through like the second, third draft, whatever. And so that was just like, wow. it completely floored me. But I was so grateful that someone as funny and kind as Jim Butcher, but also talented and you know, massively successful, gave us that opportunity to talk about it and share it with people. But at the same time, like there's so many things that I didn't expect, you know, like this was the first Mushroom Blues was the first book that I ever revised. I've finished one book before this, which I'm going to revise and release as my next book. But I wrote Mushroom Blues and then I was like, I have no idea how to do a revision. And we did a masterclass with Sue Burke on revision and rewriting, which was very helpful. But it still was challenging. It was challenging to wrap my head around how the fuck to like fix a story after that complete vomit that is a first draft. And not to say first drafts are easy either, but taking a turd and polishing it into a diamond is not an easy thing. And so for me, once I figured out a system that works for me, that's when things changed. But getting towards that point where I had a system that I could work with took a while, and it was very difficult.
That's awesome. And so that is your biggest surprise, I guess, is the challenge of the revision.
Yep.
Didn't
Because I knew
anticipate
first drafts are hard, but I also know now that first drafts don't have to be perfect. But it is not always easy to take something imperfect and try and improve upon it in such a way where you're going through this reiterative process. And there are plenty of opportunities through that to be like, oh, like I'm fucking tired of like this story and these characters, or like this particular scene that is just causing me so much angst. But you just keep pushing through it, and eventually it's like you start to learn the systems that work best for you. So
And in terms of characters, so heading back into Mushroom Blues, um, and characters that you're writing and that you're thinking and that you're spending so much time with, you've obviously Henrietta, who's your main character, your protagonist, is a human, is not a mushroom. And
mhm.
with all of your passion that comes from mushrooms, I was fully expecting Hoffman. You know, when I first found out about your book, I was like, oh, he's written it from the perspective of a mushroom, not from the perspective of a human. It was really surprised me in a good way that it was Henrietta that was the MC. Oh, why did you choose to write from the perspective of a human in this world and not from the perspective of a mushroom in this world?
Because writing from the perspective of a mushroom person would make it too difficult, because this is like everyday life for them. It would make it too difficult for me to introduce the particular aspects of this world, the fungal people, their biology, their culture, in a way that didn't feel heavy-handed. It's like writing a book from the perspective of the outsider who doesn't understand something is much is a much better way to give the reader an avatar through which they can experience the unknown. And so if it was a fungal person, there would be no unknown, because that was just life for them. But in the case of Henrietta, she's new. She's only been in Neokanoko for a few months. She doesn't want to be there. She was exiled there. And that's something that is explored in the story and will be explored further in the sequels. But she doesn't want to be there. She's mycophobic and hates mushrooms, is disgusted by them. But she's also been culturally programmed by her society. You know, this nation that invaded another country, and then how humans who go from their homeland to this occupied country, how they perceive the local population. And I was very much thinking about the U.S. Invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq in the early 2000s, and the ways in which the government and institutions like media corporations sold the public on an idea. And that idea was pitched as a patriotic representation of that nation's collective truth. And so for Henrietta, her collective truth is what her government sold her about how this war was justified, how these people could be subjugated and occupied in a way that wasn't morally reprehensible. And so for her to come to this world and just be grossed out by it, be on edge all the time, she has prejudice towards the fungal people. She's discriminatory towards them. There are slurs in this world because the humans just despise them. The military is beating people in the street or stealing their money. The fungal people are, abused by the government and subjected to food shortages and rationing and stuff like that. But for Henrietta, she starts the book with this perceived truth, this collective truth. And I felt it was so powerful to have her go through the entire story, and bit by bit, scene by scene, chapter by chapter, through her experiences and the things that she's going through with Koji and the people she meets along the way, and the institutions that she's interacting with, how that broke down her sense of truth to the point where she was just dissolved as a person, as as a an entity and an ego and a spirit, so that she could be rebuilt through this experience of awakening in order to accept herself and the things that she's done in the past, but also to understand the truth that I held so tightly in my belief and in my ideology. That wasn't me. That wasn't my truth. And so for the next books in the series, Henrietta is at a point where she realizes I am in control of myself and my thoughts. And no one else can tell me that my truth is untrue, because I know how much of my life was built upon lies and bullshit.
Yeah. Do you think that that's where the punk aspect of Fungalpunk comes in? You know, the idea of rebelling against institutions that somehow try to sever us from the collective of humanity.
Mhm. Yeah, it's like it's so multifaceted. Like there is that aspect to it, like the rebellion, the revolution, the oppressed versus the oppressor, and that kind of thing. But at the same time, there's sort of like a punk nature to fungi itself, where so much of what's happening in this world is really like, whether it's like what people are doing or like the places they inhabit, there's like an ad hoc experimental nature to so much of like the fungal people and the ways in which fungi take shape in this world. Like destruction is not a bad thing from the perspective of fungi, because fungi, through decomposition, essentially take the discarded remains, the detritus of the world, and they reshape it into life. They renew what humans often view as unrenewable. They bring back life when all we would see is death. And so that to me is punk. The ability to take the things that are seemingly broken and reshaping them into new things, new spaces, new ideas. Like there's an island that is made of mycelium that is basically like clinging on to the collapsed remains of a bridge that the human military bombed. But they created this like isolated floating mycelium island as a way to fight back against the system and reclaim their space in a city, in a world where the military only seeks to subjugate them. And so that to me is punk. How mushrooms can be the impetus for the reclamation of ideas and spaces, and even like one's own body and personhood.
And how that process benefits us as well, you know, because like if fungi didn't do what, you know, didn't do that renewal and, you know, the ultimate in recycling, the forests would not be forests. They would just be
Mhm.
piles of leaves, and the
No,
world would be overrun by.
we would not be where we are today. Like forests would not be able to grow as tall as they do. Like you said, they would be just like inundated with decomposing detritus. Mushrooms do the service of being the world's greatest organic recyclers. And in that process, they allow other systems like forests to thrive and bring the things that we need to live as human beings, like the oxygen percentage in the atmosphere is because of that relationship. You know, like our very existence is based upon the fact that mushrooms reshaped the world to make it habitable for us.
Yeah, totally. And that feeds into, we mentioned earlier about how much thought has gone into this. It that feeds into almost every aspect of this book, that there is this process of taking something that is that is awful, like hatred, or like like guilt and grief, and then renewing. There's a process of renewal that happens through the story, and I love that even in that way it's representative of everything you've poured into it. It's a
Yeah.
true it's a it isn't just the first in my eyes of like the Fungalpunk movement. It's like it sets the bar for it.
Hmm.
It's sorry,
Yeah.
go on,
Thank
Adrian.
you,
You
man.
you took it
No.
and take a breath, and I was like, oh, he's gonna say something.
Yeah, no, no. It's because yeah, this like doesn't even end at that aspect of fungi. It also plays heavily into my relationship with psychedelics, and psychedelics is like another extension of fungi and how humans interact with hallucinogens and things like that. And this idea of renewal has been super integral in how psychedelics have changed my life, and the ways in which you know uh very heavy emotional psychedelic experiences broke down my sense of ego, my sense of self, and allowed me to disembody to the point where I could view me as a separate being and look at myself from the outside in such a way that I could better encapsulate the things that are holding me back, the traumas that are suppressed within my consciousness, the scars that I bear, whether they're psychological or physical, all of these things that a lot of people just sweep under the rug and choose to ignore because it's too difficult. But psychedelics are kind of like a very welcoming doorway that opens up and allows you to look inside yourself and see what has made me the person that I am today, and what are the things that are affecting my life in a negative way, and how could I then return to myself with a better sense of how my actions are affecting those around me, and how my memories and experiences are essentially poisoning me from the inside out. And so that recognition is what leads to acceptance. And that acceptance is then the path towards this sort of idea of awakening and being able to view the world in a new light, but view yourself in a new light. To understand that, yes, I am flawed, but I am human and I am real. And the things that I did in the past, the only person who's allowing them to define me now is me.
That's really beautifully expressed, my friend. I think that I felt at times like I had maybe taken a psychedelic as I was reading this book because of how you played with my brain. I was telling you as I was reading certain sections that some of the body horror bits I was like, ew, but also yes, but also
Yeah.
ew, but also yes, but it was, and then other parts you have like sexy mushrooms, and I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know how I feel that you've written mushrooms to be
Embrace it.
attractive. Yeah.
Embrace it.
Yeah.
There is going to be like fungal sex later on in the fungal verse. So just brace yourself, buddy.
Thank that. Yeah, I have the feeling that that image is gonna be one that stays with me. It's like it was so artistically rendered, that it was very difficult to, yeah, it was very difficult to escape such a clear imagining, and so it was, yeah, it did something to my brain. But if anybody else is listening to this and are thinking, is Frasier okay, just
Did I break you?
read the
Did I
book, and,
break you?
and then tell me that there's not a sexy mushroom in that book.
Yeah.
It's there is. I can't help it. Um okay, I want to play a game with you, Adrian, because
Okay.
I feel like it would be cool. So I want to call it, is it or is it not? Okay.
Okay.
We're going to talk about mushrooms. So I put loads of thought into this. In the couple of minutes or so before we began our talk, I googled a whole bunch of
Just like I spent like a few minutes, I
mushrooms.
put so much effort into this.
Yeah, it was
This is
the
like
full
this is like
120 seconds of work.
yeah,
This,
this is
right?
like the
Yeah.
fungi pun of your set of questions.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I was like, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get loads of obscurely named mushrooms, and then I'm
Okay.
gonna just like make some up, and then I'm gonna
Okay.
see if Adrian can tell the difference between a real mushroom and a bizarrely named one. Okay, you
Okay.
ready?
Yeah.
You ready for the first one?
Are these like scientific names as
These
well?
are these are the names that when you type into Google list of obscure named mushrooms, you will get.
Okay. Okay. All right. Let's see what we got.
Number one, puffball.
That is very much real. Yeah. The
Yes,
the first basically chapter 1, every 10 chapters there are graphics in the book. The image that pairs with chapter 1 is a devil's puffball. Which is basically like just imagine like a squishy uh sort of like vacuous ball. It's enclosed, you poke at it and it feels a little bit like a partially deflated ball. You poke that shit too hard and it just like pops open and releases spores everywhere. So you can see what that spore explosion looks like on chapter 1.
that's awesome. Okay, number two, chicken of the woods.
Very real and delicious. Such a fine chicken of the woods. You've got a gold mine. Cook that up with butter, salt, and garlic, and it is phenomenal.
Correct. Bleeding tooth.
That one is also real. And my friend from Sweden, the one who worked on the album, he was out in the forest. He loves foraging and just like seeing mushrooms out in nature. But he sent me a picture one, so they have them in Sweden.
That's
Yeah,
awesome. The sweating foot.
I've never heard that one before, dude. It could be real. It could be because there are some very oddly named fungi out there. I'm gonna say no.
Correct. It's not a real one. It's one that I made up. See, I told you I put effort in. I told you I put effort in this. Okay, the veiled lady.
I don't know if that's the actual name, but yes, there are veiled mushrooms. Very beautiful. Like go onto YouTube and search just like veiled mushroom time lapse and to see how the mushroom emerges from the ground and then the cap grows bigger and then it just like sprouts this crazy like fucking sort of like mesh of a veil. It's super crazy, but it's really beautiful. So yes, that one's real.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. The cannibal's feast.
Oh, that one doesn't sound real either. I'm gonna say no.
Yeah, that's fake. That's totally fake. And final one, dung cannon.
Dung cannon. Dude, I want that one to be real. I know that there are so many mushrooms that grow in shit. And plenty of them are psychedelic as well. Like most of the psychedelic mushrooms actually grow in poo. Like there's one called Thai elephant dung, and it's just like very self-explanatory. It's from Thailand. It grows in elephant shit. Dung cannon. I'm just gonna say yes because I want it to be real.
Correct. It is real. That is a real mushroom. You are the
I got
master,
all of them.
dude.
I got
You got
all of them.
all of
Hell
them
yeah.
right. That's amazing. I thought you might have guessed the ones that were fake because they were to do with feet and cannibalism, which I know is
Because
topics
you
that
are
we talk about a lot.
super.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're all about that.
Exactly.
Maybe. I mean, there are millions of fungal species that haven't been discovered. So we can hope that
If
one
there
of them
is, if
gets
I'm
named
wrong
after it. Yeah.
and there is a sweating foot or cannibal's feast mushroom, someone tell us. Someone put a comment or something together. Just let us know because that would be amazing. Okay, final question for you, Adrian. If you could choose for this to be adapted into another type of media, what's the dream?
Anime.
Yes.
100% anime. this is just one of those worlds where it's like I look at anime like um specifically the cyberpunk edge runner anime. Stylistically, it's super beautiful. It's like it's such like a perfect evocation of that world. And while I wouldn't necessarily say like I want that exact animation style, the way that it incorporates visuals and with its storytelling, but also music and that kind of stuff is just so perfectly rendered in the way that it hits you with a mood. And I think anime, especially, it's like, man, mushroom headed people, that would just be a fucking nightmare for the prop department of any movie or television studio. I think anime is the best fit because it could best represent the the world, the fungal people, the things that take place in terms of, the spores that are released from their heads, um, the body horror, all that kind of stuff fits really well into the anime sort of milieu. And so I think that would definitely be like my top pick. And actually, Jim Butcher told us like he's sort of like trying to shop around Dresden Files anime. And I was like, yes, please, please. But at the same time, I'm like, he said that, and I was like, I know, I want the same thing, man. I want it too.
That rocks, man. It is we would so perfectly fit that world.
Hmm.
It's amazing. And there's so much I wanted to talk to you about, like your art and even like the craft of creating a police procedural, but I guess we'll just have to talk about that on the sequel next time.
Yeah, we got
For,
plenty of
for
time, man.
yeah, for everybody else who has loved this interview and who's thought, yeah, this is awesome. I want to find out more. I want to connect with Adrian, as if they don't know already. But just tell us your socials and where they can find you.
Yeah, so I'm at Adrian M. Gibson everywhere. You can also hit up my website, adrianmgibson.com. I have an online store there. So if you're interested in checking out like merch, I made merch for Mushroom Blues. I have merch from before as well, along with tattoo designs that you can buy and basically own the rights to it and get that tattoo tattooed by you know your local artist or whoever you choose, kind of thing. You can also find me on SFF Addicts every Tuesday with MJ Kuhn, my co-host, and I, where we chat with authors, either doing interviews or writing master classes. So that's in video on the FanFiAddict YouTube channel, here where you are, or on the podcast feed on pretty much like every major podcast platform. And then Mushroom Blues, you can get that now in paperback and ebook through Amazon. April 2nd is when the hardcover is coming out. April 16th is when the audiobook will be released, which I am narrating, and very thankful to have a friend of mine here in Quito who's doing the sound engineering and is just doing a fantastic job with it. So very, very happy about that. You can also pick up the Mushroom Blues soundtrack by Sporer, which is up now on Amazon, or sorry, not on Bandcamp, where you can buy it digitally, on Spotify, where you can stream it, Apple Music, I think you can buy it there as well. And by the time this comes out, hopefully there are still cassettes left, but there's like a limited 50 cassette run of the soundtrack if you want to get super meta and just like pop that thing into a tape deck. And yeah, hopefully you can get one, but at the very least it'll be available in streaming and digital.
Thank you so much, Adrian, for joining me and chatting with me today. I'm so happy for you, my
Thank you,
friend.
brother.
It is so cool that we get to talk about your book.
I
It
know,
blows my
dude.
mind, buddy. So thank you so much, and all
Thank
the
you too.
best with it. And just, yeah, for everybody listening, go buy it, because it's the start of something truly special.
Go into it with the expectation of, oh, this is a police procedural, and then come out of it with like, there's a lot of disgusting mushroom stuff and like some pretty heavy emotional trauma to deal with.
It's brutal. It's brutal in all of the
Yeah.
best ways, but it's like it
Yeah.
will renew you, and it will renew your
Mhm.
imagination, and it
Yeah.
will make you never want to chop a mushroom ever again. I
Or it will make you want to
100%.
do it very, very badly. There are
Yes,
some
yeah, you would.
there are some masochists out there, Frasier.
That's true. That's true. You're either gonna go to town on the next like
Yeah,
things of mushrooms you buy, or you're gonna be avoiding them. It's
yeah,
like what Babe did for pigs. This is gonna do it for mushrooms. I
exactly.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go
it's
get yourself some chicken of the woods. I think it's also called hen of the woods in some places. Go get yourself some of that. Cook it up. Enjoy. Read this book. Listen to the soundtrack. Eat some chicken of the woods. You're gonna have a great time.
oh, eating mushrooms while reading. Oh,
Yeah.
that's. I should have tried it. I'll do it with the sequel. I'll get some
Okay.
mushrooms.
Actually,
Yeah.
I did an interview with my friend Nicholas W. Fuller yesterday, and we came up with like my version of like eat, pray, love, which is just like live, love, do mushrooms. So you can do that too. You live, you
Yeah.
love, you get high on some mushies, and hopefully you enjoy the fungal verse.
Everybody,
Oh my
please
god.
join me in saying thank you to Adrian. Absolute
Thank you too, my
pleasure,
friend.
buddy.